As darkness falls, you face to the western sky, you see this dazzlingly bright thing. What is it? Chances are it's the planet Venus. You want to learn all about it? Well, stay up all night with me. So maybe you've seen this at night. You're driving home and you're seeing this really, really bright light. You're thinking, what in the world is that? Is it a plane? Is it a UFO? Yeah, don't call me at the observatory to tell me you saw a UFO. It's probably the planet Venus. And we're in Venus peak season right now, where it's showing up in the western sky right after dark. And I'm telling you, it looks crazy bright. Like, even I've seen it several times, so many times, hundreds of times, and I still can stop and be like, what in the world is that thing? And then I have to remember it's Venus. Now, why is Venus so bright? It's just because it's so close to us. So it's one of our closest planets to us. And you can see it has all this reflective atmosphere, this cloud cover that bounces the sunlight back to us. So that was what makes Venus so incredibly bright. Now, I want to get a little bit about its background, because Venus is associated with the goddess of beauty. Well, mostly because it's like this really, really bright thing up in the nighttime sky. So it is the brightest star-like object, brighter than any other star, brighter than any other planet. Only the moon is brighter than Venus at nighttime. So you definitely will notice it. And it's also known as the morning star or the evening star, depending on when you see it, because it can only be visible just after sunset or just before sunrise. So right now it's the evening star. Right after sunset, you'll see it. Now, one of the things is, if you look at it with a telescope, you're going to be surprised. It's not exactly how you might suspect it will look. And here is a view of Venus plus the crescent moon up there. And all right, this picture looks pretty normal. Venus looks stunningly bright. We got the moon there. It's a nice little crescent phase. But if you zoom in a little bit more, and if you go at just a certain time, you'll see that Venus changes its phase over time. So sometimes Venus looks like a full Venus, and other times it's like a crescent. And so what's going on with this is, well, Venus is going around the sun. And as it goes around the sun, it's reflecting sunlight back to us. And we can see different phases at different times of its cycle. So when it's like a full Venus way up there, it's on the other side of the solar system and really, really far away from us. Thus, it's kind of small in size. When it's coming around the bend and getting closer to the Earth, well, most of the sunlight is on the other side. And so it appears as this crescent here and looks a lot bigger in the telescope as well. So here's kind of the whole cycle of what it would look like as Venus is going around the sun. So when Venus is really, really far out, it's on the other side of the sun from us, really far away and really small in a telescope, but pretty much all illuminated. And then as it comes around, it gets closer to us and gets a lot bigger. I mean, it's like a real dramatic difference between when Venus is far away and Venus is close. And when it's really close, we have this nice little crescent there. So this is the whole cycle that Venus goes through, and it depends on where it is in its orbit as to what you'll see. All right, so Venus can be the closest planet to Earth, but it's not like we really knew what was going on the surface, because those clouds block out so much light that we can't really see it very well from Earth-based telescopes. So we're trying to figure out, astronomers were trying to figure out what's going on below the clouds. We figured Venus is going to be hotter than Earth, but not sure exactly how hot. And we can't really tell from the ground-based telescopes what even the surface features look like, because when you're looking at it, it's just, this very brilliant white little light in the telescope. So we couldn't see any features. We couldn't see down to the surface, but so it was mostly just our imaginations go wild. So before the 80s, there was a lot of fictional stories taking place on Venus to see what was going on. And it wasn't until about 1989 where we sent a spacecraft out there called Magellan that circled around Venus and had radar mapping so it could penetrate through the clouds and see what was going on the planet's surface. So here's the cloud cover. This is like our view, was our view all the way up until 1989 when Magellan got there. And so what they found was a very inhospitable world. In fact, well, I guess we kind of knew a little bit about it because we tried to land things on the surface of Venus. It's kind of ironic because every single one of the United States attempts to land on Venus, to monitor Venus in the 70s, all of them failed. They had a 100% failure rate going to Venus. The Russians had a little bit of better luck. They had some landers that actually survived the descent down to Venus and took a few pictures. So you can see this is some pictures of Venus's surface taken in 1975 from one of the Venera landers from the Soviet Union. I think there's only like about 12, 13, 14 actual photos of Venus because of the surface from the landers, because they didn't last long. The heat, the pressure finally got to them, and even the robotic crafts stopped working very, very quickly. In fact, you see this picture, there's like some parts falling off of the lander there and everything like that. So this was not like super easy to get to. And so what's going on Venus? Why is it so hard to live there? And oh yeah, here's one more picture of the spacecraft that's pretty much breaking down as we're watching it. It probably melted into a pile of goop actually because it's so hot on the surface. But this is what's going on. The atmosphere there is kind of like a greenhouse effect gone wild. So we get all of this CO2, we get a little bit of nitrogen in there, and the sunlight comes in, but the heat gets trapped by that atmosphere. So Venus is an incredibly hot place. Its temperature is right around close to 900 degrees on the entire planet. So I'd be like the best weather forecaster on Venus. It's 900 degrees, cloudy every day. But if it rains, you're not going to get much relief because when it rains on Venus, it doesn't rain water, it rains sulfuric acid. So isn't that crazy to think that like we have the planet Venus, the closest planet to Earth, but we didn't even know what was going on it until 1989. So like as a kid, I'm like, Venus, all right, yeah, I wonder what's going on there. I don't know, maybe there's like palm trees and desert locations. We have no idea. And so I want to share a few pictures from the Magellan spacecraft. So it circled around Venus for a while and mapped out about 98% of the planet. So here's one of the maps here, and you see these like strips that are going through there. Those are places where it couldn't quite map it, but everywhere else it got some good views. And so they released these pictures to the public, which are really cool. This is false color, so it's not really that color on the surface of Venus. But this is showing what the terrain is like on the surface there under that almost 900 degree heat. And so we got mountains, we got valleys, we got all sorts of things here. And it's some pretty dramatic landscapes. Signs of old volcanoes, meteor impacts, lava flows, and a pretty gigantic mountain also. So not exactly a place we're going to go visit anytime soon, but some amazing postcards from this world. So one of the things about being an astronomer is once somebody hears you're an astronomer, they like to ask you lots of questions. So I'm going to do this segment called Hey Dean, because that's usually how it starts when they want to ask me an astronomy question. They're like, hey Dean, I got an astronomy question. And one of the typical questions about Venus, well, this question comes from Jack from Fort Mitchell, a name we totally didn't make up whatsoever, or a location. A real question from a real person that said, hey Dean, I heard that there could be life in the cloud tops of Venus. And this kind of made a story for a little while. It was kind of out there that some researchers were thinking maybe the cloud tops of Venus up above at a good altitude away from the heat, and maybe life forms could exist. In fact, there was some data to suggest that this is possible. It didn't last long because very soon after, people refuted the data and said, no, there are no signs of life in the cloud tops of Venus. But it still gets you thinking about it because, maybe you could live in a certain, place up in the clouds. If there was a certain altitude that you could live in above the clouds, you could get to a nice little section where it would be a comfortable 72 degrees every day and maybe form a little cloud city. And so it is possible that maybe in the very distant future, we could have a cloud city living in the cloud tops of Venus. Yeah, just not so much on the surface, I don't think. I don't know. This looks more like something from a galaxy far, far away than anywhere close to us. So that's it for this episode, all about Venus. I hope you got interested in our closest planet to Earth, our twisted sister planet. Get outside and try to do some stargazing tonight, or as we say around here, stay up all night with me.